So in today's video, you're going to be hearing me mispronounce a bunch of French names and words because today we are going to be doing 15 facts on that wonderful French author, Jules Verne. Hi guys, it's Samantha, and it has been a very long time, but I am finally back with another Facts on Authors video. This is a video series where I choose an author. For right now, it's been classic authors, and I tell you guys 15 facts and interesting things about that particular author. Today I've decided to do Jules Verne. I went to Twitter, asked you guys what authors you guys would like to hear me talk about. Brock from Let's Read suggested Jules Verne. I thought it was a great idea, so I looked him up. So I would like to apologize in advance because I do not know French, though I am part French. So this is very sad, but I can't speak it, and so I know I'm going to be mispronouncing a lot of these words and names, so please, please forgive me. I can't pronounce them. I will try my best. So just my disclaimer for this video. So now let us get started on these 15 facts. Mr. Jules Verne was born on February 8th, 1828. He was born in the lovely region of Nantes, France. Sorry, guys. His father was an attorney and his mother came from a family of ship owners and navigators. It was exposure to ships and boats of all sizes that kind of sparked Jules Verne's imagination for travel and exotic places from a very young age. Fact number 2, at age 11, Jules Verne attempted to steal away on a ship bound for the Indies. He wanted to go and explore the world on his own. His father, however, discovered and intercepted his son aboard the ship before he could go any further, and he told him that for now he should only travel within his imagination. It is believed that this may in fact be an exaggeration of a real event, but it was put down in the very first biography about Jules Verne that was written by his niece. Fact number 3, at age 14, Jules Verne entered the second of the Catholic boarding schools that he attended. It was here that he really started to become interested in writing, and it was during this time he wrote one of his earliest surviving works. And here you will see some very butchered French. It was called Un Prêtre in 1839. I don't know why I was kind of using a Spanish accent, sorry. Which translates to a priest in 1839. This was kind of a comical look of the school and the monastery that he was being educated at. Fact number 4, in 1847, Jules Verne was sent to Paris to study law by his father. In part, he was sent away to distance himself from his first cousin that he had fallen in love with and who was later married that same year to an older gentleman. However, later that year while he was in school, Jules actually ended up falling in love with Rose Hermione Arnaud. However, her parents disapproved of him and ended up marrying her off against her will to a wealthy landowner who was 10 years her senior. Jules was very, very upset and devastated. Letters to his mother kind of showed this and how upset he was about the loss of his love, being married off to this man, and throughout his life, many of his works would include a young female that is forced to marry against her will. Fact number 5, while studying the law, Jules Verne began to write plays. His uncle in Paris actually introduced him to a bunch of literary salons where he met a lot of prominent literary figures, including the wonderful Alexandre Dumas. He ended up showing his friend Alexandre Dumas one of his comedic plays that he had written. Dumas ended up helping him rewrite it, and Dumas and his father ended up having the play produced by the National Opera in Paris in 1850. Fact number 6, in 1852, Jules Verne's father offered him his legal practice. Jules Verne declined because he wanted to pursue his literary passion. He is quoted as saying to his father, "Am I not right to follow my instincts? It is because I know who I am that I know what I can one day be." It was at this point that his father ended up cutting him off because he did not approve of his literary pursuits. Fact number 7, in 1856, Jules Verne left to attend a wedding as his friend's best man. It was here that he was introduced to the bride's sister, and he ended up staying with the bride's family. It was a 26-year-old widow with 2 children. Her name was Honorine de Vian Morel. Again, I apologize for my horrible pronunciations. This young woman's brother ended up offering Verne to learn to become a broker. Verne accepted, his father approved, and he ended up embarking on a pretty successful career as a broker, which supplied him with a rather steady income. A year later, in 1857, Verne ended up marrying this young Miss Honorine. Fact number 8, between 1852 and 1856, until personal differences separated them. Jules Verne wrote for Pietre Chevalier and his magazine. It was during this time that Jules Verne came up with a new concept for a novel that he called Roman de la Science, which roughly translates into a novel of science, which would include a lot of factual info in a very fun and adventurous setting. His friend Dumas encouraged him to do so. Dumas had actually attempted to write such a novel himself, but this novel was never completed. Fact number 9, in 1857, he published his first book, Le Salon de 1857, which translates into the 1857 Salon. In 1862, Jules Verne began an acquaintance with the well-known publisher, Pierre-Jules Hetzel. Hetzel offered Verne a contract wherein he would be able to publish 3 volumes of his work in his magazine a year in exchange for a steady sum of money. This was the first time that Verne had been presented with a contract that would provide him with a steady income for his writing, and of course Jules Verne accepted, and for the rest of his life, many of his works were published in this magazine. Fact number 10, Verne had a very strong desire to learn a lot about the scientific community and the knowledge of the day, as well as the world around him. And he tried to include these in his novels so that people could be educated and entertained. And in reference to this, he is quoted as saying, "My object has been to depict the Earth, and not the Earth alone, but also the universe, and have tried at the same time to realize a very high ideal of beauty and style. It is said that there can't be any style in a novel of adventure, but it isn't true." Fact number 11, Jules Verne's novel Around the World in 80 Days was actually inspired by true events. In 1870, the railroad magnate George Francis Train, during his U.S. presidency campaign, declared that he would attempt to go around the world in 80 days. He was not able to attempt that on his first attempt, but he tried 2 more times, and it was on his 3rd attempt that he was able to accomplish it in 1890. He then managed it in 67 days. Fact number 12, in 1863, Jules Verne wrote a novel called Paris in the 20th Century. This novel featured glass skyscrapers, high-speed trains, gas automobiles, calculators, and a whole array of things that eventually became true a century later. The novel itself was never published because at this time, Verne had become very pessimistic about his expectations for society. He expected society and humanity to fail instead of succeed. As a result, his editor, Hetzel, would often edit these things out, and he never ended up publishing this novel as the main character. And this novel ends up coming to a tragic end after not being able to find evidence. However, this novel was discovered by Verne's grandson in 1989, and it blew everyone away that he had predicted all these things that later became true a century later. Fact number 14, this wasn't the only thing that Verne had realized that ended up becoming true. There were a lot of things that Verne had in his novels that later became real. The first of which was the powered submarine that you can see in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This did not come about until 25 years later in 1886. When it was invented, the inventors ended up calling the submarine the Nautilus, in homage to Jules Verne's Nautilus in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Another thing that ended up coming to pass was newscasts. Jules Verne had written an essay called In the Year 2889, in which he tried to idealize a lot of things that could come to pass. One of these things was that instead of a newspaper, you would have reporters and scientists and other academics talking directly to the person subscribed to this news. It was basically what he was describing was the newscasts that we see every day on our nightly news. In that same article, he also referenced something called atmospheric advertisements, which was eventually skywriting. And in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, one of the weapons that the crew had was a type of gun that shot out a high voltage of electricity. This later became known as the taser gun. Quite an outstanding man. He was kind of the Leonardo da Vinci of his time. A lot of the things and inventions he had included in his works ended up coming true. Fact number 14, Jules Verne published on average 1 book every year over the course of 40 years. Fact number 15, Jules Verne died in 1905 of diabetes. He left behind him a hugely prolific body of work, among which were about 60 plus novels, 14 plays, roughly 26 short stories, 3 works of nonfiction, and 8 essays. This man was completely astounding. He has to be one of the most fascinating people that I have researched for these videos, and there is so much more I could have said about him. There were so many facts I wanted to include, but this would have been more than 15 facts. So anticipate sometime in the near future Facts on Authors, Jules Verne Part 2, because he had a really fascinating life and I would really like to do another video on him. So look out for that video sometime in the future. Don't know when it will be, but I know it's going to happen because this guy led quite the intriguing life. Alright guys, that was my 15 Facts on Authors video, Jules Verne. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments what authors you guys would like to see me do in the future, any comments you might have relating to this video and Jules Verne himself, and what your favorite works are by him, just anything you want to throw down. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, happy reading. Bye!